Today is a great day. Welcome to day 2 of Chazown. I'm here with Stephanie Melky, aka KetoMom, and I'm her husband, Steve. And we're excited to talk to you about discovering your purpose and your plan for your life. So what do you got for us, sweetheart?
If you did not tune in yesterday, Chazown means it's a Hebrew word for the dreams, revelations, or visions God has and thinking about when he made you. You're one of a kind, placed on earth with a plan that you alone can carry out. So God isn't hiding it. He wants you to embrace it. So we're talking about what you're called to do. And so if you are brand new, we'd love for you to post a new below. If you've never watched any of our lives and you're like, what does this have to do with keto? It actually has a ton to do with your lifestyle and your fat loss and any goals you want to achieve, because it starts with your mindset. It starts with having a vision. It starts with having goals. And so we've been going through books for almost a year every morning on the page. So you're going to get more of a mindset live and thought to help you throughout the rest of your day. And then the rest of the day, you can tune into the page for all of the recipes and keto tips and tricks. Or
why is it so important to have your mindset right? Why is it so important to have your thinking right?
So that you can actually make better decisions throughout the day. If you wake up with a heart of gratitude and you're happy and you're thankful and you're looking at life not I have to, but I get to. If you look at life with like, I've got a purpose, I've got a plan, I've got goals, so I'm not going to be swayed over here, you're going to make better choices every single day when you actually have an idea of what you're called to do.
I love it. I mean, we've kind of realized this over the last 7 years, kind of getting to know more about who we are, how we're created, the things that, like really what we're called to do.
Right.
But if your thinking is broken, there's a lot of other areas in your life that are going to end up being broken.
Right.
And so, or I'll just say not necessarily broken, but just not at a level to where you feel like you're having breakthrough or you're having success. And so the hope of this talk today is that you kind of identify maybe some of these habits or maybe some of the things that you're saying to yourself. And you're like, you know what?
Right.
To be expected. Today's the day I can have some breakthrough and I can start winning in some of these areas of my life.
Right. So we're going to walk through. We're still, if you actually have the book and you're following along, we are on our page 12. We're just going to finish chapter 1. So we're going to give you some questions to think about. Basically, he started the beginning of the book and he basically said, when you are lying on your deathbed and when you are thinking over the course of your entire life, will you be thinking of all the regrets that you have, or will you actually be thankful and have lived a life of no regret? So on page 12, if you're following along, that's what we're going to dive into to wrap up the chapter. And he says this: when you begin to understand what you're supposed to do, you can better discern what you're not supposed to do. And he says it's so important because other people, this is really great, especially if you're a teenager. Like if our daughter's listening, my hope is that I don't project what I want her to do, or she feels like she has to do something in her life because we lead her that way. All of our kids, we all have different purposes, right? So maybe you've gotten to the point in your adulthood,
right, and
you're doing what your parents or your grandparents or other people told you that you were meant to do. So I love,
if you're watching this live, write this down.
Yeah.
If you're watching the replay, just pause it, get a piece of paper and a pen and write this down because this is so good.
He says, so most importantly, because other people have plans for your life. He says, I can't count the number of good opportunities and invitations I receive from people, but good opportunities shouldn't distract me from better and great.
So even though you're presented with good opportunities,
right,
it doesn't mean it's what's best.
Right. It says every day you will have many opportunities to be distracted with good things. Your Chazown gives you the ability to say no to good things so you can say yes to great things. And what that means is we're going to figure out what you were created for. What do you want to focus on? What are you supposed to do? And so we get asked to do a lot of things. And I feel like you have to discern, is this good for our family? Is this good for what we're going after? It might be a really good opportunity, but is it the best opportunity?
It's really good. And remember, in life, there's seasons.
Right.
There's seasons of really hard work. Think about a farmer. There's seasons where they have to prep the soil, and they have to plant the seeds, and they have to water it, and they have to weed it. Like, none of this stuff is easy. And then you're like, oh, it's growing, everything's going well, but then you still have to harvest it.
Right.
It kind of, as you were reading that, it just made me think, like, there's a lot of things that we're planting seeds in the ground.
We are in planting season a lot.
And it's actually this, I'm seeing the circles of what she's about to tell you. And I'm letting you know these certain areas, if you can focus on some of these areas, it helps you to make your best yes.
Right, right. So with your Chazown comes endurance. With your Chazown comes peace. With your Chazown comes passion. And he talks about if you don't have peace in your home and in your life, if you don't feel like you can do it, and he says, when God gives you a dream or a vision, he's there with you alongside of you. You have to work, but you've got a peace and a passion about you. Oftentimes I feel like you talk to people that are, whether it's with your work or relationships, like where is the passion behind what you're doing? And if you don't feel passionate about it, what do you have to shift to help your mindset with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really good.
So
well, and the other thing too is be okay knowing that growing sometimes doesn't always feel the greatest.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard. We talked about choosing your hard. I mean, if you're brand new and you didn't watch yesterday's live, I'd really encourage you to go back and just watch the introduction to this book.
Right.
But I would say this, like with growing and with challenges comes the opportunity to step into your best yes. It presents opportunities for you to develop endurance, develop peace, develop passion. These are just some really good attributes. So I'm going to let you keep going because there's so many great things in this.
He says, you show me a person who has no motivation in life, and I'll show you a person with no vision. So just a great thought. So he gives a really great example of how do you know when you're on point. And I love the example he gave. He gave an example of D.L. Moody. He was in ministry. Yep. And so he took a whole bunch of pastors one day. And he said, Moody took the pastors to a hotel window and he asked the men, so these were all people in ministry. He says he took them to a hotel window. He had them gaze out into a big city park. And then he said, what do you see? And they all agreed that they saw people. They just saw people in the park. And with tears in his eyes, the great evangelist said, but I see countless souls who will one day spend eternity in hell if they don't find their Savior. This man had vision to tell the world about Christ. His vision was resulted in an unstoppable passion. And you've been blessed with a Chazown that you can do the same. So I love that because he said, oftentimes you could take 5 people and look at the same circumstance, but hopefully you'll have one that has a vision or a passion to do something about it. He saw it differently than every other evangelist that looked at it. They saw people. He had a passion and a burning desire to share what he loved with those people. And so your passion is going to be different than your parents or your sisters or your best friends. It's like, what is burning inside of you that you need to get out? What are you called to do? What were you created to do? What are you afraid to do because you feel like you can't do it? But with God, with endurance, when you're passionate and when you've got peace about it, it will happen with work over time. But don't just sit on the sidelines and let life happen to you, because you're going to end up someday with all of those regrets going, I didn't do what I was called to do.
It's really good. Well, it also made me realize that not just will those passions be different, but your perspective in which you're looking through that window, it was different as well.
Right.
And so even just a little bit before that, it was kind of talking about with the passion, the person who has no motivation in life, you'll see the person who has no vision.
Right.
That kind of stuck out to me because I just think we've talked in the past about your closest friends and your environments and what you put into your mind. All of those things line up to where you kind of lead that day, but where you end up leading and living your life. And so I would just take to account, like just let that settle with you, because I mean, I know most of the time you kind of have the friends that you have, or you have your family by origin, but you actually can choose your family by choice. Like you can choose your friends. Like you have the ability to say, if you're real honest with yourself, this neighborhood or this environment or this workplace is not suiting me the best. It's not the best environment. It's not helping me to develop my passion. And I wouldn't also say just go crazy and say, well, I'm quitting everything because this is my passion. I believe that the potential and those open doors and those opportunities, there's so many of them out there. You got to look for them, and then you bring your passion to that is where you actually excel. But I think the reality is so many of us, we kind of just, we could just say, well, this is how it is, and that's how it's always been, so that's what it's going to be for the rest of my life. If that's just the case, then I would say scratch that thinking. That's really negative thinking. You have the ability, like you are a creator. You can create new environments. You can create new friendships. You can create new passions. You can create a vision that is actually truly compelling, not just for you, but your family and for your friends.
Right, 100%. And now that you have an awareness about it, and let's just say that you don't tell anybody and you just start dreaming for yourself, what's going to happen is your RAS is going to be activated. It's your reticular activating system. So if you're going, like what Steve said, it's always been this way, I will never, but what happens if you just find a teeny tiny little bit of faith to believe that something that you've always longed for could happen? What's going to happen is you are going to activate your reticular activating system, and you're going to start seeing small little opportunities, small little doors, maybe somebody to talk to. But in all of that, you're going to have to take the action into actually doing it. You'll have opportunities. It's going to be, so basically, this is exactly what he says.
Before we go into that, it made me think of, I just saw a comment and it said, if it were only that easy, right? If it were only that easy. Two things I have to that would be, last week we were in Tennessee and you were talking about reticular activating system. My friend's like, I want to look at the new Bronco. I'm like, a new Bronco? I don't even really, like, I've seen it a couple of times. But guess what? I talked to my daughter about it because she's looking at the point where she's about to get her first car. And if there's any parents out there,
but she's gonna have
but
to
she's
say,
looking. So
yeah.
if any of you parents out there have ever been through that, you're like, oh, you want a safe car, you want it to be dependable, all those things matter. But then it can't be too fancy, because I remember like it was kind of a good thing to learn how the car broke down on the side of the road. But then, like, do you really want that for your children? All these things. That's what I'm thinking of, right? But we start talking about the Bronco. What do you think I start seeing absolutely everywhere? I think it was honestly a Bronco convention.
All over.
They were, I mean, I saw hundreds, if not thousands. And then my friend he was renting a Toyota Highlander vehicle, I think is what it was. And I was like, I've never seen one of these in my whole life. Next thing you know, I'm seeing them everywhere.
Right.
Okay, so you're like, if it's only that easy, what are you saying to yourself?
Right.
I have heard Stephanie answer thousands upon 10,000s of messages from people all over the world talking about whatever challenge it is that they're facing. And if you just can listen to your own language for just a little bit, like after you send Stephanie the message about whatever your challenge is, or if it were only that easy, I'm not saying there's challenges and difficulties in life. There is.
Right, 100%.
And honestly, there should be, because that's the only way that you can level up in life, is by breaking through some of those plateaus, breaking through some of those challenges. But here's the ticket. Like, you have to be able to hear what you're saying, because if you're already putting diminishing language and you're already capping your own limitations by what you're thinking and what you're saying, by just saying that's just the way that it is, guess what? You're right. You are so right. It is, and it will always be. I even used an absolute there because that's the reality. Like, if you can't change your thinking and if you can't change your words are like a rudder to a massive ship.
Right.
And if you see this big old rock, like I think of the movie Titanic, that big old iceberg, and you're like, we're going to hit it. We are definitely going to hit that iceberg. Yep. Okay. Yep. We're going to hit it. Your words are going to lead your life in that direction. You will sink.
Right.
But if you can change your thinking and if you can change your words have power.
It's super important. I think when somebody, who I'm not sure who said, if it were only that easy, we like to tell people this when we're doing business conversations. It's not easy, it's simple. If your goal is fat loss, it's simple. It really is. People overcomplicate most things. So it's drinking more water, eating less sugar, being mindful, like being aware of the things you do every single day. If your goal is to get financially free, it's a simple process. It's hard work, but you stop spending so much money. You get rid of your credit cards. You don't go to Target. Like, you shut down your Amazon cart. Like, there's simple things you can do to move forward. So when you say if it was only that easy, it's not easy. It takes discipline, but it's a simple concept of a couple things you put into place to make it work. Right. The power of your words, the environment that you spend your time in. Are you sitting in front of the TV for 5 hours at night? Like, you have to have an awareness. Or is your life every single day doing the same things over and over again because you have no awareness of what you're actually doing.
But here's what we're believing for. We're believing that this resonates with you because of the fact that thinking is important, but it's not everything. It's thinking and the action. It's thinking, being mindful, but then also putting into play or pivoting even just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like if the cycle's broken currently in your day-to-day life, if you're not getting to where you want to go, you have to you have to be accountable to those actions.
Right.
And you have to say, what is just one thing, not a massive thing, right? Not a massive thing. It could start with awareness.
Right.
It could start with awareness, and then it could create a new habit. It could start with awareness, and it could create a small pivot to create take a different way to work today. Like look at ways that you can even just start shifting things, like move stuff around in your kitchen cupboards, move stuff around in your refrigerator, clean out your vehicle, change your desk around, like paint a wall. It sounds silly, like wear different shoes. Change up something to kind of just break the pattern, because if you're getting the same exact results in life, but you want something different, but you're not willing to do anything different, it's kind of the definition of insanity, which you all know that. But
well, maybe they don't.
Maybe you don't. And if you don't, now you do.
Now you do.
And now that you do, guess what? Now we get to create some small changes. And when you make some small changes, I'm not talking about huge changes, but when you make small changes, you actually end up changing your life.
Right. All right. So here's the question. Are you willing to let God disturb you with dreams so big that you don't know how they'll be accomplished? A vision that can only come true if he helps you. I liked that.
It's really good.
All right. So no more wandering, no more emptiness, no more search. You will say someday, this is why I was created. Let's go through that. This is the meaning for my existence. And God will smile. So here's what I did on Facebook. Yeah. If you're not on Facebook, you're going to have to go check it out. In the header of this video, to wrap up chapter 1, he says, I don't even know how to say this word. Epitaph?
Epitaph.
I don't even know what that is. Basically, he says this: I want you to take a moment today, if you're going to play full out, if you're actually going to go through this, if your goal is to figure out what your Chazown is, if your goal is to have goals and visions for your life, to wrap up chapter 1, I actually put all of these questions on Facebook in the header of this video.
The description? Yep,
in the description. So it says, take a minute and write down your final chapter of your life. The way that you want to be. The way that you want it to be. And as you do that, think about your life from this point of view forward. Forget the past because you can't change it. And during the final days, how do you want to be seen, or how do you want to finish? So he wants you to follow these sentences. He wants you to write this down. If you choose to participate, great. The questions are this: the things that was most important to me was, people say I stood for. I made a difference in the world by.
These are so
God was glorified because I. People knew I loved them because. And the reason I expect God to say well done is. Like if you take these questions, there's 6 of them, and you actually just take 5 minutes today and you just pour out your heart, and you don't have to share it with anybody. It can just be for you to maybe start thinking of like what I'm called to do. This is going to help us start creating our Chazown. What would you want people to say about you when you pass away? You're basically going to go to the end of your life and answer these questions. And then we're going to reverse engineer this and go, if you're not right now on the path to having any of this happen, you've got to make some shifts.
I think it's beautiful. I really do. I think everybody's at a different place in life. And when we first did this almost 20 years ago, I mean, the reality was it was probably 16 years ago that we went through this. We were at a different season. We didn't have as many children. We lived in a different place. What I love about this is that you're going to get a certain plan that is perfect for you today, right? You're going to get a direction and a vision for where you're at today. Mm-hmm. And then over time, as you start taking these steps, it's okay. Like, you're going to dream more. You're going to be able to give more. Right. You're going to be able to do more. But so often we just don't even focus on it. So therefore we just kind of stay in that pattern of complacency. And we're like, oh, it is what it is.
Right.
But the reality is we're going to be intentional about some of these things, because if we can be intentional with doing such a great job to make other people's lives better. I think of like going to work, for example. So many people put so much care and passion and everything that they have into their job. And I've met so many people who are like, I'm going to make all the money that I can make now so that later I can retire and then have all this stuff to give my family. With what they don't really realize is they're sacrificing the one thing that maybe they have right now, which could be their family, their time with their family, the time with their kids, of this false fallacy of this great retirement someday.
Right.
I could go down so many different rabbit holes, but I just want to encourage you, like, answer these questions. And I think it would be really good for our family to answer these questions as well, to kind of just see where we're at today, to see what we're standing for, to see what we're fighting for, to see where we're going.
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, I've kind of seen this in our business in the last 7 years. Like, when we got started with our business, this is super small, but it was like, how can we get off of food stamps? How can we not drive around a van that's held together by duct tape?
Right.
And how can we just put a little bit of money into our checking account every
Right.
month? Like, that was kind of our original goals with what we did with our business. And that's where we were at, right? And then when we thought differently, we did some things differently, we were able to kind of level up. And it was like, all right, we completed those things. What's next? And that's what's going to happen when you do this book, when you go through this book with us, and when you commit to playing full out with this book. And if you're having fun, and if you're changing your mindset, and if you're changing your words, you're going to have a different life at the end of the month.
Right.
Like, after we go through this, you're going to have a different outlook for certain things.
I love it. I love it. So tomorrow we will talk about your personal vision, and we're going to start writing some things down so you can either just listen. If you have the book, you can continue to follow along. We'll do part of chapter 2. Otherwise, you can send messages, shoot us a message, and we'll answer any questions that you have. But the questions that I read to you are on Facebook in the header of the title of the video. So you can check them out.
There you go.
That's all we have. Hope you
Part
guys
2.
have an incredible morning. And again, we're here to help. Reach out with questions. If you just want some recipes, go to ketomomsecrets.com. Has everything that you need between book reviews and recipes and anything to help you on your physical health.
Yep, and if you got any questions at all, just send us a message. We'd love to be able to help you and navigate anything personally for you as well. So,
All right. Have a great morning. We'll see you later. Bye, everybody.